Don't forget to sign up for our free resource from our favorite positive reinforcement dog trainer, Irit Bloom. You can simply go to thisispawprint.com/ask.
Hi, my name is Stephen Shalowitz, and if I could be any animal, I'd be a cat living in the household of crazy cat people because I know that I would be very well taken care of.
This is Paw Print, an animal rescue community. Episode 40. I'm Harold Ree.
And I'm Nancy Ree. Today's guest is the talented Stephen Shalowitz. Stephen hosts the One Way Ticket Show podcast from New York City, where he has interviewed some amazing guests, including Dick Cavett, journalist Mo Rocca, and dancer Louis Van Amstel.
Stephen also shares 2 cat stories. First, about his cat Blue, which he later renamed Sayang, and Gracie. If you want to learn more about Stephen, the One Way Ticket Show, and see some beautiful photos of his cats, go to our show notes at thisispawprint.com/40. That's the number 40.
I produce and host the One Way Ticket Show podcast. And the premise of the show is I ask my guests and we explore where they would go if given a one-way ticket. So there's no coming back. It is indeed a one-way ticket. But the twist is that destinations can be in the past, present, future. They can be real, imaginary. They can even be a state of mind. So it's a one-way ticket almost anywhere. And as we record this, I've had nearly 100 guests. I've had everyone from talk show host Dick Cavett to CNN's Bill Weir to CNN's Richard Quest to who else? Jose Ramos Horta, who's a Nobel Peace Prize winner. I've had Mo Rocca from CBS and the Cooking Channel. So I've had some terrific, wonderful guests. And they've all given me just extraordinary answers. Some have given me answers like, I want a one-way ticket to Paris. But then others have said, I want a one-way ticket to Paris of the 1920s. I had one guest, a fantastic artist here based in New York, and by the way, I'm based in New York, who wanted a one-way ticket to be a Nabatean in the Negev Desert. I had one singer whose one-way ticket was to an audience, while his twin brother's one-way ticket was to gratitude. So people have taken the one-way ticket answer and they've interpreted the answer in their destination in numerous ways. And so we explore the reasons why, what they would do in their destinations, who they would take with them, what they would like to get out of the experience. And it's just a really, really vibrant, fun conversation. And we learn so much about the people, and we learn really what it means to take a trip, what it means to have a journey. And we're really redefining what travel is all about on the show. So I've been doing it now for 4 years, and it's just been a terrific experience. And in preparing the show, I mean, I've learned an awful lot. And in fact, it's almost just as fun preparing the show as it is actually doing the interviews and getting to meet all of these really fantastic, very accomplished individuals. So I very much enjoy travel. I especially enjoy travel to rogue states, to rogue nations. For example, I've been to North Korea. I've been to Syria before the conflict, so I'm glad I really saw it then. It's terrible. It's absolutely devastating what's happening there right now. I've been to Iran, to Libya, of course, before the problems there. I've been to Sudan, to Algeria, where else? Ethiopia, Rwanda, Mali. I actually lived in Asia for 16 years. I lived all over China, and I lived in Singapore. I was working in advertising for a major international advertising agency in Asia. And then I was working for them here in New York up until just this last December. But in addition to working for them in Singapore, I also produced and hosted a weekend radio show. Doing that show was really where the idea for the One Way Ticket Show came about. I thought, I'm going to hold on to that idea, and I will make it to New York one day, and I'm going to do a whole show around it. And that was really the genesis behind the One Way Ticket Show. So fast forward, I did move to New York. I waited a couple years to start the show and to start the podcast, just because I basically knew 3 people when I landed here. And so I needed to really build a bit of a network and so on to create the show. And I love this whole industry of podcasting because there's a podcast from beekeeping all the way to the history of the English language. That's one of my new favorite podcasts. It's called The History of English. I love your show that talks about animal rescue. I mean, there's just so much that you can learn and become enriched from in the world of podcasting. And I have to tell you, I'm very passionate about my show. So I hope that once people tune in, they're equally as passionate about my show.
Why don't you tell us about your animals?
I've always loved animals. Growing up, we did not have a pet. My mother correctly said that if we got a dog, she would have to end up taking care of it, and she was absolutely correct. And as an adult, and as I mentioned earlier on, I lived in Asia for a long time, for many years, for 16 years. And when I lived in China, and we're talking about the 90s, people at the time did not have pets. And I don't want to say nobody had a pet, but a pet was a real status symbol at the time. Then I moved to Singapore. We're talking about 1997, and I very much wanted to adopt a cat. And I soon found out that I was allergic to cats. So I nixed that. I moved to New York, and I thought, you know what? I'm going to see if maybe there's a cat out there that I'm not allergic to. And I would go to some of the pet rescue events. Many of the pet rescue organizations, they have mobile vans where they'll bring the pets on the vans and you can adopt there, or you go to the shelter where they are. So I was doing that, and there were a few animals, a few cats. And I say cats, I love dogs as well. But I think given my schedule and given that I live in a small apartment, I thought it's better really that I get a cat. And so one day I decided to go to the ACC, the Animal Care and Control here in New York City, which sadly is a kill shelter. And there was one cat in particular that I really took to. His name was Blue, B-L-U-E. And he wasn't blue, but he was sort of a champagne kind of color cat. I looked at his card, and it said that he came from Staten Island. He was 12 years old. He was not neutered, did not use the litter box, played rough. And you have to understand, I am allergic to some cats, but I still decided to adopt him.
Huh.
After all of that, because there was just something about him that I felt was so lovable that this guy needed a chance. Luckily, I have a vet right across the street from where I live. So I had arranged to have a vet appointment the moment that I picked him up and took him home. So I took the taxi from the kill shelter to the vet. They checked him out. They said he's fine. They said that we arranged for a neutering session for the following week. They said he needed some teeth pulled. I took him in. He was sneezing.
He was allergic to you, or?
I'm the one that should be allergic, not you. So what's happening? So I brought him in, and very sadly, he got one of those nasty shelter viruses. What happens is, if people don't know, is that if they're in the shelter and they get one of the viruses and they're in a kill shelter, sadly, they're put down. So at least I'm glad I rescued him. He was treated in the hospital. He was on IV for several days. I had to take him back. I took him back. I had to give him, oral medication and so on. He got better. We neutered him. I had 2 of his teeth pulled, and he was happy as a clam. He was so happy, in fact, that he was basically, as I called him, a dog in a cat's body, because he was, even though he was 12 years old, he was playful like anything. Everyone said, well, don't worry, cats sleep, cats sleep most of the day, and they sleep for 18 hours of the day, and so it'll be real easy to take care of him and so forth. Well, what I learned was cats sleep 18 hours during the day. It's that they're up at night. See, I didn't know that cats were nocturnal, okay? And so for a year and a half, I was really sleep deprived. I tried everything. I've watched the Jackson Galaxy, My Cat from Hell show. I tried all the tricks. I had colleagues that were giving me advice left, right, and center. I did everything. I was speaking with one of my fantastic former colleagues who's become a friend. Her name is Meg. And Meg has a big house way out in the Hamptons, 2 hours away from New York City. And, God bless her, she makes the commute every day, and it probably takes her more than 2 hours to get here. But she has a big house, and she, at the time, I want to say she had 5 cats, and she had a dog, and she's a huge animal lover. She said, look, Stephen, if you're ever at the point where you need to rehome him, I'll be glad to take him. Well, after about a year and a half, I went up to Meg's desk and I said, Meg, the time has come. So let me just say that the kitty, and I renamed him Sayang, by the way, S-A-Y-A-N-G, which is a term of affection in the Malay language. And so he's leading a great, great life now. So that's one rescue story. One of the women, though, that I met in the whole cat rescue community is Bunny Hofberg, who runs Frankie's Fund, which is an extraordinary group that specializes in senior cat rescue. And Bunny is really an angel because everybody knows Bunny. What she does to help senior cats is extraordinary because everybody wants a kitten. But as she says, nobody thinks about senior cats. And actually, a senior cat, the personality, they know how to use a litter box. And so, there are many benefits to having a senior cat, and she likes to promote senior cat adoption, and she has saved just countless cats. So really hats off to her. I got to know Bunny, and last July, it was end of June, early July, she said, Stephen, we have an emergency situation. We really need to have a cat rehomed, fostered, if you will. Would you help? And I said, sure. I said, look, I'll do it for about a week or two. I said, I'm going to be traveling. Let's just do it for about a week or two, and that's it. She brought Gracie, who is also kind of a champagne-colored cat. Maybe I'll send you a photo, and you can put her photo up on the show notes page.
Oh, believe me, we will ask you for lots of photos. Okay, great.
I said, look, I'll take it for about a week or two. That was July 3rd of last year. So I am still what I call perma-fostering, and she's just been absolutely fantastic. And I will say, to the point of cats sleeping 18 hours a day, she probably beats that, because I think she probably sleeps like 22.5 hours of the day. And she's really been just a great, terrific cat to have around. But we have had some litter box issues, and I would love it if your listeners can send me an email with their recommendations on what I should do differently, or am I doing everything that I can? And again, I'm going to give out my email address. It's Stephen@theonewayticketshow.com. Once again, Stephen@theonewayticketshow.com. I had my original litter box from my original cat, which Gracie was using. And then about a couple months after, she stopped using it, and she was doing her business in other parts of the apartment, or just right outside the litter box more than anything else, really. And we got a new litter box. Bunny, again, from Frankie's Fund, brought in a new litter box, and she was using that exclusively. I thought, great, but I never put the old litter box away. About 2 months ago, I noticed she started using the original litter box. And then she was using kind of both litter boxes. And then I noticed that she was missing when she was using the litter box. Part of it was just because the way that she's positioned in the box. Then I noticed that she actually will go like right outside the box, and she doesn't even step in the box to use it. As they say, you know what, or get off the pot. I mean, I just want to know, is she going to use the litter box, or is she going to use the wee-wee pad? I would actually almost prefer if I could even train her just to use the wee-wee pad, and then you just fold it up and then you just throw it away. I would love to hear from your listeners if they've had that experience, if they've had that issue, and how they've dealt with that issue. It just shocks me, the number of unwanted dogs and cats that are out there. We as a society, we think we're so smart with all the technology that we can create, and we think we're so smart with the things that we do in space, or just anything, or special effects in films, or whatever it is. We think we're so smart and so clever, yet we still haven't cracked the code on how to control the pet population. We know how to do it, it's just people aren't doing it. And it's just devastating when, as I said, you think of the number of unwanted dogs and cats that are in your own community, everyone that's in earshot of this, not only your community, but if you multiply that by every community in the United States. And as I mentioned earlier on, I lived in Singapore, and I always ended my show with the importance of spaying and neutering pets, as Bob Barker used to do,
sure.
As you know, on The Price is Right. And I had learned a factoid when I was living in Singapore, which only has a population of, when I was living there, it was about 4 million. But every month, the SPCA received 1,000 unwanted pets a month, and that was just the SPCA. And that's a tiny country of, at the time, it was about 4 million people.
Right.
And that was only one rescue group.
Yeah, and that's
it's unbelievable.
Number. Yeah.
It's unacceptable in any society in the modern world to have this going on. So that's why your show is so important in the rescue community.
Here's one question for you about Blue, actually. You find Blue, the definition of a hard luck case. I always find that when I feel sympathetic towards an animal like that, it's like a touchstone for my own life. What are some examples of when someone gave you a first chance or a second chance?
That's a really interesting question. The short answer is, I think when you've applied for a job and you've received the job, that's always a great chance. But I'm going to interpret the question in a little bit of a different way, though. I think that every day, all of us are given chances. And I don't necessarily think that, I can't look back on my life and say, wow, that was the biggest break I ever got. But I look back and I say, wow, I've had so many great experiences and so many acts of kindness bestowed on me that there isn't one. I think that every day, if we just look at our lives, there are a lot of great things that people are doing for us, but we sometimes just don't recognize it.
That's a beautiful answer. Speaking of seizing the moment, when I think of Stephen Shalowitz, I definitely think of seizing the moment. Tell us about maybe one of your favorite stories about getting that wonderful guest.
The first one is, I will say, Dick Cavett, because it was a Sunday, and I went to Barnes & Noble to pick up a book. I'm very old-fashioned. I don't read on a Kindle. I don't read on my iPhone. I still have to read a book. And I still have to read, by the way, Harold, a newspaper and a magazine. I have to read them physically. Anyway, I went to Barnes & Noble to get a book, and there was a line at the information desk. So I went over to the magazines to look around, just to browse, went back to the information desk, the Barnes & Noble here on the Upper West Side. And there was a woman that was taking an inordinate amount of time with the person behind the desk. And I was sort of rolling my eyes thinking, when is she going to finish? Well, in any event, I'm glad she didn't finish, because in walked a man and he said, "Excuse me, are you next in line?" And I said, "Yes." "Excuse me, are you Dick Cavett?" And he said, "Yes." And I said, I had met you about a year or so ago, and I invited you on my show, my podcast. And he said, "What happened?" I said, "Well, I didn't hear from you." And I made light of it because he's Dick Cavett after all. He could not have been more gracious. He said, "You know what, we'll have to do something about that." And he gave me the email address of his assistant. I immediately emailed his assistant, of course. When Dick Cavett gives you an email address, you act on it. And that was on a Sunday. On Wednesday, I got an email from his assistant. And I thought, okay, here's the email. It's going to be a rejection. And I opened it up, and it said, "Dear Stephen, thank you very much. Dick is going to be traveling." And I thought, okay, here it comes. He's not going to be able to do it. So the only time he can do it is, and then she gave me the dates. I fell off my chair.
Right.
And so I immediately just started preparing. And after I conducted the interview, I thought to myself, when I'm 125 years old and I'm ready to meet my maker, I will remember this moment. He is the master of all talk shows, of all interviews, of getting anyone who is anyone, in the second half of the 20th century and beyond. He has the most gracious spirit, and I interviewed him not only once but twice, and both interviews are up on our website, The One Way Ticket Show. And I encourage everyone to listen to the interviews, because his one-way ticket is just so much fun, and it is so Dick Cavett. We had so much fun just chatting between the two of us before the interview started that I thought, my gosh, we got to start the interview. But he is just an extraordinary individual. He has such a gracious spirit. He has a wit like no one else. And he's the kind of person you can just speak to for hours and hours about absolutely anything. This man is one of the smartest people that I have ever met in my life. And let me tell you, I've met a lot of people.
The 2 episodes with Dick Cavett, I'm not kidding you, they are phenomenal conversations.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Harold. I had very good luck the first day that I interviewed him, because I was rounding the corner and I had to Bill Weir from CNN, who hosts a brilliant show called The Wonderlist, where he travels to places on the verge of change. And it's in its second season right now. And I approached him and I told him about my show. I gave him my card. And funny enough, about 2 days later, I also ran into him on the street again. And he was gracious enough to also give me an interview. And he's a fellow Midwesterner. I'm originally from Chicago. He's originally from Milwaukee. In fact, he worked in Chicago on WGN for a number of years. And he's also a terrific guy. One of the beauties of living in New York is that you literally see a lot of people out on the street and you can approach them. Richard Quest, the CNN anchor, same thing. Many people, I will do a cold call and approach them, explain what the show is. They'll visit the site. They'll see my other guests. They'll hear the interviews and they'll come on. Others I'll see on the street and I'll invite them. Some say yes, but let me tell you, Harold, a lot of them will also say no.
Oh, sure.
And it's not them that say no, actually, because they're willing to do it. It's their handlers, if you will.
When you think about a one-way ticket, what would be your one-way ticket?
Harold, I was hoping you wouldn't ask me that question. I'm not ready to reveal my one-way ticket yet. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
But let me just say that I have a couple in mind. I do have a couple in mind that I feel very strongly about. But again, the notion of what a one-way ticket is can mean many things to many different people. I was just actually going through the list of one-way ticket answers from my guests just recently, and I was reminded again that some of them are physical places. Louis Van Amstel, who is a dance pro and he's on Dancing with the Stars, his one-way ticket, spoiler alert, but his one-way ticket is to Bali, and he talks about that. Some are to California or some are to Paris. But I had a one-way ticket for one of my guests who wanted to be the head stonemason at Machu Picchu when it was built in the 15th century. People are interpreting these one-way ticket answers in many different ways. Someone else wanted a one-way ticket to a place where people limit their use of technology.
Oh, I like
Okay. Where would you go, Harold?
If I had a one-way ticket, I think physically, wherever my wife and son are, that already is. Physically, I'm already there, right? Mentally or spiritually, somewhere where I can have wonderful conversations with people like Stephen Shalowitz.
That's very, very kind of you. I appreciate that, Harold, and right back at you because, again, I think what you're doing on this show is so needed. I can also tell that you really enjoy it and you get a lot out of it. And you spend a lot of time doing it.
Well, you and I both, right? I mean, podcasting,
yes.
it truly is a passion for the great majority of folks, right? How do we find the One-Way Ticket Show, either online or on social media?
So people can listen to the show by logging on to theonewayticketshow.com. And they can see all of our guests. They can see all of our guest destinations. We're also on Facebook at The One Way Ticket Show. Twitter is at TOWT Show. They can also find me on Twitter at Stephen Shalowitz. People can also write to me at Stephen@theonewayticketshow.com. Stephen with a V, Stephen@theonewayticketshow.com. Instagram, just find me, Stephen Shalowitz. We'll have this information up on the show notes page of your show.
Absolutely. We will have all the
I really
links.
appreciate that.
Any other thoughts on animal rescue? Any other thoughts on life advice?
I think it's all about, at the end of the day, when we talk about life advice or animal rescue or how the two worlds collide, for me, it's about a couple things. It's really about respect. It's about honoring our environment. And I think we lack kindness, we lack civility in our society today. I don't have to tell you, turn on the news and forget about the whole election and forget about politics even apart from the election and how nasty things have become. But there's just a lack of kindness, a lack of respect in our society today. And I think we need to have more of that, not only for ourselves, but also for our four-legged friends as well.
We want to say thank you to Stephen Shalowitz for sharing his story. And I love the image of a one-way ticket as it applies to animal rescue. A lot of times the animals we save truly look at us as their one-way ticket to a happier destination. If you want to learn more about today's episode, go to our show notes at thisispawprint.com/40. If you'd like to nominate someone to be a future guest on Paw Print, you can email us at thisispawprint@gmail.com or go to our contact page at thisispawprint.com/contact. If you want to find us on social media, Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter, look for This Is Paw Print, all one word. If you want to listen to more episodes, you can find us on iTunes, SoundCloud, or Podcast Addict, a podcast app on Android phones. Don't forget to sign up for our free resource from our favorite positive reinforcement dog trainer, Irit Bloom. Go to thisispawprint.com/ask. We want to say thank you to all of our listeners around the world for sharing your stories. We've been listened to in 88 different countries. The last 3 include Latvia, Paraguay, and St. Martin in the Caribbean. Remember that you share a positive message of love and peace by saving an animal. Don't forget to give an animal a one-way ticket today. Have a great day, everyone, and see you next time on Paw Print.
Paw Print is a production of EVER Education.
You can't handle the truth.
Woohoo!